Welcome to this third video on Might and Fealty. Remember, each video will talk about one aspect of the game in some detail, and there will be a new video every few days, so stay tuned. Last time I spoke about history, and like in the real world, one big part of history will be war. That is the topic for this video. Military, soldiers, warfare. Might and Fealty goes a pretty uncommon way with its simulation of battle, which is all due to the focus of the game on personal interaction. On the one hand, the game will give you individual soldiers, down to a name and a home village, when you recruit an army. On the other hand, actual battles are abstracted into several phases without detailed informations, battlefield movements and such. So let's start at the beginning. Recruitment. As the lord of a village, town or city, you can recruit peasants as soldiers by training and equipping them. This takes time, and the more advanced the troops you want to get, the longer it will take. This is real-world time and can be quite considerable. Giving a dozen peasants an axe and telling them they are now soldiers won't take more than a few days game time to teach them how to swing it without hitting themselves. But if you want to create knights in full plate armor on war horses, you might well look at a fortnight or more of training time, meaning several days of real time. As with many parts of the game, preparation and looking ahead is rewarded, not mass recruiting at the last possible moment. Settlements also have a limited amount of training they can supply in the form of trainers and space, etc. That means that beyond a certain number, training will slow down. Training 10 spearmen in your village will be faster than training 50, simply because you can't train all of them in parallel. In a big city, however, you might. One reason why a kingdom should try to create at least a few cities within its domain. Recruits, like the workforce I talked about in the economy video, will also be missing from the local economy. They still need to eat, but they don't work in the fields anymore and thus don't produce food. This puts a natural limit on the size of the standing army you can afford. You need to have enough peasants to feed your soldiers. But back to the recruits themselves. Once finished training, they will be automatically assigned to the local militia and defend the settlement. But you can also mobilize them and have them join your army. Every single one of them has a name and remembers where he's from and has his own personal equipment and experience. Why simulate an army at this level? Because I want things to have meaning. Conquering the village of Braga might result in some numeric losses in other games. In Might and Fealty, it will have claimed the lives of Hans and Frank, while Sebastian came away wounded and Simon fled the battle dropping his shield. Yes, all of this can happen and will be recorded. You can review the last battle and you can see how many enemies each of your soldiers killed and what happened to him personally. And if someone died, you have to bury him. They don't just disappear. And remember that the game knows where everyone is from. When you disband your army, these people do not just vanish. They will try to trek home. Depending on the distance, some will make it and some will settle along the way. You can also retrain soldiers to use different equipment, so you could start by recruiting simple troops and then progressively improve them. Equipment will get lost and damaged and will need to be resupplied. In essence, if you want to wage war, you need to manage your army. But of course, there is a simpler way. Make other people do it. As a king, you do not have to be at the battlefield personally. You can send your vassals and the members of your realm. Back to the military. While soldiers are simulated in much detail, battles are not. The reason is simple. There is no reason to go into details on stuff that you, the player, cannot meaningfully influence. Battles need to be resolved at the game turns, preventing direct player interaction. We cannot force you to be online at a specific time to make in-battle moves, and we can't draw out battles over days and days while the participants basically play a play-by-email chess game. So for battles, the results are more important than the details of what actually happened. The game simulates what matters, who died or was wounded, who scored how many kills, etc., but not that which doesn't matter, which unit was positioned where, who moved where, when, etc. Battles are simulated in 4 phases: deployment, ranged, melee, conclusion. The deployment phase is where everyone takes a side. Due to the action queue system that is the topic of later in-depth video, this is where you learn if your friends and allies really are, or if you've been betrayed. If it is some comfort, you wouldn't be the first king to find his trusted friends taking out sides with the enemy. In the ranged phase, the armies march on each other, and the ranged troops are the first ones to get some action. All ranged actions are resolved simultaneously, so even if you completely obliterate the enemy, unfortunately their arrows were already in flight by the time they die and will still hit you. Morale is an important factor in this phase. An army decimated heavily by incoming ranged fire might easily turn and run right then and there. Next is the melee phase, which is where the armies clash and fight it out until one side is down or running away. Internally, the game runs a series of battle rounds, but we don't bother you with the details. Ranged troops continue to fire, but at a much reduced efficiency now that they can't simply shoot in the general direction of the enemy anymore. Usually, battles will end with the losing side trying to run away. In many ancient battles, this was the part where most casualties were made, because the victor will pursue and slaughter the fleeing loser. To run faster, retreating troops might drop weapons, shields and such. What the game does not is declare a victor. Now this might surprise you, but again the important part is meaning. If you inflicted 3 times your own losses and casualties only to be finally forced to retreat, is that a victory or a defeat? If you crushed a tiny enemy unit whose sole purpose was never to defeat you but to delay your march, what is that? The game cannot know the circumstances of the war, so it will state the facts of the battle and nothing else. It is up to you to declare yourself the victor, or not, and to have some heated discussion with the other side, who might also declare themselves victorious for other reasons. Soldiers can die, be wounded or routed. Wounded soldiers might heal or die from their wounds. Equipment might need to be resupplied. These are the consequences of battles. Not yet implemented in the current prototype are siege battles, but there will be extensive siege warfare with fortifications and siege engines, assaults and sorties. And in the next video, I will talk about the other part of war, politics. Stay tuned.